This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
At Pepe Sayer, we focus on quality. So if someone comes into your restaurant and they see you're using Pepe Sayer, they know immediately that that is a quality product you've got in front of you on the table. And that comes from a decade of just doing quality butter day after day.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
Pork in general is kind of central to a lot of Italian cuisine, or a lot of European cuisine as well. And Europeans in general are very famous for their ability to use the whole animal. You know, pork is obviously one of the great animals to be able to do that with.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Pasta is one of the most beautiful crafts in the world and one of the many gastronomic gifts from Italy. And for Joel Valvasori, specialising in the premium fresh pasta and the delights of Friuli and the Venetian spice route, sets his restaurant apart from the pack. Joel, how are you?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Great. It's good to get you on the show. How are things in WA at the moment?
Things have, still been good. It's, coming out of winter, so hopefully people come out of their can't handle the rain kind of slumber that Perth tends to have a bit of. But no, it's all good.
Pasta is not uncommon to just about everyone in Australia. It's a staple in most pantries, but you sort of elevate it, and it's really at the core of what you do. Tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah, so at Lulu's, obviously the focus is on pasta. All different varieties of production. Lots of different recipes and so on go into them as well. We really just wanted to give pasta the sort of platform that it really deserved. I think a lot of the time it gets a little bit sort of misunderstood as an easy thing to do, but we certainly take it to another level, and that a lot of that just comes down to the discipline, in the art itself that we put into it. So I think you can feel that in the texture.
Tell us a little bit about the inspiration of the food and the restaurant, and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I guess the backbone of what we do is like you stated in the intro, it's based around Friuli and the flavours of sort of the Venetian spice route, which do make up a heavy portion of the flavours in Friuli and around the Adriatic as well. So that being said, we don't cook out and out Friulano food. It's not just regional cuisine. It really is just the backbone of what we do. We cook in a style of a cuisine, but it's also made for the Australian public, using Australian, predominantly Australian ingredients.
Tell us a little bit about the Venetian spice route and Friuli, and what sort of food are we talking about? It's so different depending where you are in Italy. Yeah,
well, Friuli is a different place in itself. It's at the top of the Adriatic. It does have port town in port city, I should say, in Trieste, situated a little bit above Venice on the Adriatic as well, but also bordered by Austria at the north and the Alps, and Slovenia to the east there as well. So a lot of influence and a lot of conflict in history around those areas, but also a lot of trade as well. Being a sort of northern Adriatic port, it's kind of the gateway into sort of central Europe. So a lot of trade went through those parts.
Well, I want to explore what you're doing there a little bit later on at the restaurant. Take us back to when you were young, where did you grow up and what sort of role did food play for you?
Yeah, so being a good little Italian family, we actually lived in one of the northern suburbs of Perth, and we lived next door to my nonna and nonna, who had their house. So, which is not uncommon, I think, both back in the old country, but also over here, that you're living right next door to your grandparents, which also meant that they had a huge influence on our upbringing. And especially in the culinary sense as well. We spent a lot of time at their house or as kids, playing around their gardens and kicking soccer balls into their vegetables and stuff like that. And also stealing the occasional little cheeky beans off their vines and stuff like that. So, yeah, had a good culinary upbringing.
Did pork make its way into any of the dishes? Were there any dishes from your youth that you recall where pork sort of played a role?
Yeah, look, I think pork in general is kind of central to a lot of Italian cuisine or a lot of European cuisine as well. So it certainly does find its way in, whether it's through the meat itself or through in the cured varieties. Obviously Italians and Europeans in general are very famous for their ability to use the whole animal, and pork is obviously one of the great animals to be able to do that with. I guess we didn't necessarily always have pork on the table, but there might have been some pork involved somewhere.
Do you remember any dishes at all that stand out from that time growing up?
Our main pasta sauce at the restaurant is our tagliatelle with a ragu, and the ragu is a veal and pork based ragu. So that would be kind of one of the biggest ones that we would have eaten all the time. And I've had it on my menus for as long as I can remember, because for me it's kind of perfection.
Without giving away too many of your secrets, take us through the process of a ragu. Like how do you get such a great ragu?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of things. Technique and time, as in not the herb. Technique and time are two of the main things I think that go into building flavour within the ragu. Obviously, the ingredients and stuff that you use is paramount, but also, I think there's a big difference between a lot of ragus, but they might just be, the subtle use of, a different herb or a different spice or so on. So, ours is built, with your usual, garlic and onion, carrot, celery kind of thing, but we have a lot of rosemary, sage, we have a bit of cinnamon, a little bit of dried chili in there as well. And our ragus aren't super tomatoey, so there is tomato in there, but it's not a very tomato heavy ragu. Neither's anything really in a lot of the style of cooking that we do.
When did you first sort of start getting interested in food from a career sense?
I think it was probably when I moved out of home for the first time, and I think I remember cooking my first sort of attempt at a pasta sauce outside of home, and it sucked. It really sucked. And from that point, my nonna used to cook us, and she used to give us takeaways of her sauce, her sugo, to take home, because we were poor, struggling young adults that needed to be fed. So I remember taking her sugar and just sitting down and with a little spoon in hand, and I was looking at it and trying to pick it apart with the spoon and tasting the individual sort of components in it, trying to work out, without asking her, of course, what she had put in it, for starters, and then trying to work out how it was that she cooked it. So that was big, because there are so many ingredients in it. It's a nice little lesson in trying to pick apart a dish. So that's probably the first sort of thing that I can remember about, apart from baking and stuff as a kid. When I really started to look into the what's, whys and hows of cooking.
Tell us about the first couple of years, when you first got your foot in the door in a commercial kitchen. Where did you get started and what was it like?
So I didn't take the traditional apprenticeship path into cooking. I started off, going to TAFE in Melbourne, and from that managed to get myself a good casual job in a one-hat restaurant called Zio's Restaurante. That was in East Melbourne, and I think the head chef, or the owner chef at the time, said to me, "I don't need you to know how to cook. Anything I need you to cook, I can teach you." But he just wanted to make sure that I had the right attitude, knew my way around the kitchen basics. So that was the start. So starting in a one hat restaurant, sort of really set me up and set my path within the restaurant industry. I think if you end up in some lower or lesser places, maybe it does start to set you up with some bad habits from the outset, but also not realising that there are different levels of food that you can be involved in. So I think it was good to start in a hatted restaurant to set me on that path.
As you built your career in Melbourne, what were the sort of really important people and venues that you worked at?
I think they're all important, along the way, like that one. And then, did a little bit of time at Circa and Sati at the time as well. And then, I think there was Bottega in there. Did a little stint with Matt McConnell at Ballerina before I moved back to Perth. So I went to Ballerina because I really admired what Matt had done there at Ballerina. It was in the sort of, it would have been in the first sort of 4 or 5 years of it being open, but always appreciated it from the outside. And I really liked looking in at the business for the way that I could see that it worked, and I really wanted to know how he did that from inside. So as much as I didn't spend a long time there with Matt, I certainly learnt a lot and was able to take away a lot to put into my own business down the track.
You mentioned before you went back to Perth. Tell us about that period of time. What lured you over there?
Look, it was kind of the time was right. We'd been in Melbourne for 10 years. Our first daughter was 1 year old, I think, at the time. I think it was just sort of time that we realised that being around family, should really be an important thing for children growing up. So I think we came back one Christmas and then decided that if things didn't work out in our prospective jobs that we were about to start that year, that would probably make the move back.
What was it like moving back for you? Was it a big change?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Coming back to Perth, Perth had just come, or were coming out of the mining boom, so it was the tail end of the last mining boom. So the food scene was very buoyant, not necessarily great, but very buoyant at the time on the back of there being lots of money around. There were new restaurants opening up all over the place. So yeah, it was interesting. It was hard. It was hard coming back into a scene that hadn't quite developed properly yet. I think it's made lots of headway in the last sort of 12 or so years since I've been back. There's lots of really good restaurants that I think starting to be competitive, on a national level. It was difficult to try and find the right place and the right people at the time to, get involved with. And I was lucky. I met the guys from Lulu La, shortly, 6 months after coming back, and they were just about to open Lulu La. So yeah, it was lucky to meet those guys, and we were able to work together for quite a long time. I think 4.5 years in building Lullarook to what it's become, and yeah, getting it recognised on the national stage as well.
Well, you made a real name for yourself there at Lullarook as well. Take us back to that period of time. Were there any pork dishes from that period of time for you that you remember that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, back then we actually had a whole pork section on the menu. So it was the whole pig, and we were lucky enough at the time to be able to work with some good producers. And we actually had the storage space and the kitchen size and so on to be able to deal in whole beasts. So yeah, we're able to break that down. I'm not going to lie, we did need a supplement. Being the size of Lullarook, we did need a supplement. Some of the things here and there with other pork, so it wasn't all just from the sort of rare breed farms. But we tried our best to make sure that we could honour the as much of the animal as possible.
Was a couple of standout pork dishes, during your time there that you can tell us about?
Yeah, so I've always been into making sausages. So as a good way to utilise a lot of the shoulder and neck and skin and so on. The sausage making is something that we did a lot of. I think we had one pork sausage on that was kind of like a standard menu item. That's it's one of my uncle's, my late great uncle's recipes from Friuli. So that's the salsiccia fulan. So that's kind of our standard pork sausage. A little bit of white wine, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of cinnamon, lots of salt and pepper. So we had that as one of our standard dishes on there. We also make some other interesting sausages. One being called fegatini, so little livers, which is a pork sausage that's also got some pork liver through it as well. That's quite delicious. Got a bit of a sort of that livery pate flavour to it. And another one which a lot of people would know as cotechino, we called musette, but I guess traditionally with musette, musette refers to the snout of the pig. So it is a larger format slow cooked sausage. You simmer it in water. It's full of skin and fat. Lots of spices. Again, white wine, garlic, and so on. It's got a higher salt content to it to age further, and then also to be able to come back to sort of an edible salinity once it's been boiled as well. Yes, that's a great sausage. A lot of sausage making, and then utilising the other bits in, things like the ragouts or doing pork cutlets, crumb pork cutlets, cotoletta, and things like that. So yeah, a lot of pork.
Tell us about the beginning of Lulu's. How did it all come about?
Yeah, so Lulu's was actually something that my wife and I had been working on while we were in Melbourne, and we'd looked at sites while we were there, and I just, we weren't comfortable enough. I wasn't confident enough in my own sort of experience, and it's not so much on the cooking side, but with regards to taking the risk, going balls and all in, and opening a restaurant. That's a pretty big risk. So we were looking at that, and then we decided to make that move back to Perth. And I guess after my time at Lullarook, I just found that year on year I was going through the same patterns, the same patterns of trade and so on. And I think I'd taken what I was doing at Lullarook as far as I could do, and also gained a heap of extra experience in running kitchens, learning the ins and outs of Perth and Perth diners and so on, and while obviously making a bit more of a name for myself in Perth, that there was time to jump in and put it all on the line and open my restaurant, see if everything that I'd learnt over the years would all stack up to it being a success. So.
Were there challenges in getting it all up and running?
I don't think the challenges have finished. To be honest, we're coming up 7 years in next month. And obviously the first few years were getting it up and running, getting the right staff, getting the right culture going. And then obviously we ran into that thing that everyone ran into, and that still seems to be kicking everyone in the nuts as well, in one way or another, with the interest rates and so on that have, sort of come back into effect, in the last year. I don't think there is an easy time for hospitality. I haven't experienced it yet. So,
Lulu's, as you mentioned, is sort of something you've been working on or thinking about for a long period of time, and now you've had it for 7 years. How do you describe the venue to people?
Yes, it's small. It's about we've got 46 seats inside. Very very intimate. As in its size. Very loud, raucous. It's a place for having fun. It's kind of it's part of the Friulana people's sort of mentality, to eat, drink, and be merry. So we wanted the place to have a good vibe to it. We wanted it to be, loud, glasses chinking, people laughing, enjoying themselves. We didn't want it to be a library. Some people still don't get it. We've lost a lot of customers along the way because we are the way we are. But I think we've also gained a lot of customers that can appreciate the spirit of the restaurant.
You mentioned the your famous ragu, which is on the menu. Is there any other ways you can share how pork weaves its way through the menu there at Lulu's?
Yeah, look, in our chef's menu, we still put sausages in several forms into that. Currently, we've got a campanella pasta dish that we use the Musette sausage as part of a base in there. We throw around a few specials here and there, roasting porchetta, or the crumbs cotoletta. Yeah, and it also comes in a lot in cured forms as well. In the antipasti, but also a lot of pancetta going into sauces, guanciale, things like that. So yeah, it's in line with the cuisine. Pork is very heavily leaned on.
You mentioned porchetta, and I remember seeing a photo of your porchetta just recently as a special, which was a bit cruel, I thought, given I'm so far away from Perth. Tell us a bit about the porchetta and how you make it.
Yeah, look, we can do it, a couple of ways. Using the whole midsection, so the loin included in there, or we can also do it just with a rolled belly as well. We make a bit of a sort of dry rub to put inside. Ours has a bit of fennel seed, rosemary, sage, a little bit of very finely chopped garlic, lots of salt, lots of pepper, and I guess then it comes down to whether you want to do sort of a med-well kind of roast with it, or whether you want to slowly cook it so that the pork actually breaks down within the crackled crust. A lot of the time we just do a medium well roast with it. It kind of takes a bit more time to to do the slow cooked version. But yeah, I guess the main thing is for us is bringing that crackling up first on a very high heat to help dry out the skin, but also dry out any moisture as it's trying to escape, and really start to get that fry happening within the salty skin itself, and bringing up that crackle nice and quickly, and then drop in the oven back to finish the cook through.
That sounds amazing. Lulu's has been going over 7 years now, as you mentioned. How different is it from when you first opened the doors to what we see now?
I think visually it's changed a bit over the years, but as far as the menu format goes and the concept goes, it's stayed relatively the same. We do have several items on the menu that are just constants, because we want people to be able to come back every week and get certain dishes, the tagliatelle being one of them, my nonna's meatballs, which are a pork meatball as well. They're two staples there. And then we've got our chef's menu, and our chef's menu has become a lot more important since we started. Like when we started, the chef's menu was a bit more of a this is what we're about. Kind of menu, to show people that, we're kind of unsure about how to have the best experience. So that used to have a lot more of our what have become our classic dishes involved in them, whereas now the chef's menu is a lot more of our premium offering. It's majority made up of things that aren't on the a la carte menu. It's where we get to play a lot more with seasonality of ingredients, but also put a few more things on there that might be a little bit more challenging for people. But in saying that, it's our job to make sure that a challenging idea is still delicious, and we can turn people's opinion on things. Smoked eel might be an example, or something like that. A lot of people sort of imagine an eel and go, "Oh, I don't want to eat that." But if we can make a delicious pasta with smoked eel, and make you see past the good-looking animal that it is, then that's part of what we do in the chef's menu.
The culinary landscape in Perth has evolved beautifully over the last decade, and you've been a huge part of that. What do you love about the Perth hospitality scene?
I'm really like seeing the growth, not just in the industry, but the growth as a result of like more kids coming through good restaurants and good alumni, and them starting to step up and put their sort of youthful energy and their experience together, in these good restaurants to start to evolve the package even further. So yeah, there's some good kids coming through. I say kids, but they're adults, but for me they're kids. Some good kids coming through, including our own head chef James, who's been with us. He's come up through the ranks within Lulu's, and he's now been with us for over 6 years, and is now in the head chef position. And he's really kicking goals for us as well. So it's great for me to be able to take that step back. I haven't been in the kitchen for a couple of years now, so I've been in more of a hosting role.
Well, you're doing amazing things over there in the West. What do you love about what you do?
Just to add on to what I was saying before, about my staff. I just I love being able to pass that baton over to them. And now that I'm out the front on the floor, love sort of meeting and greeting all of our guests as well, getting to know some of our guests that have been dining with us since we opened, a lot more, which is a great pleasure, because you don't really get to do that as much from behind the kitchen. A lot of people sort of are used to seeing me on the other side of the kitchen, sort of looking angry and it's not actually anger, it's just focus. It's different, but they sort of see it as anger. So getting out there and getting to talk with them, meet them, know a bit more about the people that you're looking after, that's another really great part of it as well.
Well, Joel, it's an absolute honour to have you on the Crackling today, and good to catch up again. Please keep in touch. We'll catch up again soon.
Will do. Thanks for having me.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.